I sat on the cold bench in the courtroom, clutching the sleeve of my cardigan so tightly that the fabric left lines on my palm. My ex-husband's attorney paced back and forth with all the ease of someone delivering a rehearsed monologue, and I was the target of every pointed word. Ms. Rivera has no stable employment, no recent tax filings, and no verified address. My client, Mr. Brooks, provides a two-story home, private schooling, and a full-time nanny. Meanwhile, her living conditions, the lawyer paused for dramatic effect, are unclear at best. I stared at the ground, willing my tears not to fall. Not here. Not in front of him. Not in front of the man who spent our entire marriage making me feel invisible. Beside me, my 10-year-old daughter Mia held my hand, while my 6-year-old son Leo clung to my side, his cheek resting against my arm. They didn't understand every word being said, but they could feel it, the tension, the judgment, the weight of what we were about to lose. I dared a glance across the courtroom. There he was, Ethan Brooks, clean-shaven, well-dressed, exuding calm confidence. He barely looked at me. Why would he? He didn't need to. His lawyer was doing all the talking, spinning a carefully crafted narrative. Successful father, stable provider, misunderstood wife who abandoned a promising legal career for God knows what. They made me sound like a ghost of the woman I used to be. But that's what Ethan always wanted, to rewrite my story without me in it. The judge adjusted his glasses and sighed as he scanned the documents in front of him. Ms. Rivera, do you have anything you'd like to say regarding your current financial situation or living arrangements? My throat tightened. I had prepared for this. I had spent weeks assembling every piece of evidence I could, school letters, lease agreements, receipts, but looking at Ethan and his high-powered attorney, it all felt small, insufficient. I cleared my throat and tried again. Your Honor, I know my situation doesn't look good on paper, but I have done everything I can for my children since the day I walked out of that house. I left because… You left, Ethan's lawyer interrupted, without notifying the court or my client. You removed the children from their home and disrupted their lives. That's not the behavior of someone acting in their best interest. I opened my mouth, but the words tangled in my chest. Because the truth, the real truth, was too heavy to summarize in a single sentence. I left because staying would have destroyed me. I left because one night, while Ethan was drunk and shouting over a misplaced cell charger, Mia locked herself in the bathroom with her brother, whispering, "Don't cry. If we're quiet, he'll stop." That night broke something in me. But how do you explain that in court without sounding emotional or unstable? The judge tapped his pen on the desk. This court acknowledges the father's ability to provide a materially stable environment. We must now determine whether the mother can meet the children's basic needs in a consistent manner. I felt like the air was draining from the room. And then, I'll never forget this, Mia stood up.
She didn't ask.
She didn't whisper. She just stood. "I want to say something," she said, her voice clear and trembling. The judge blinked. "Young lady, you need to sit down." "No, please." She looked at me, then at him. "It's important." He hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Go ahead." She pulled a small notebook from her backpack and held it up. I wrote everything down. Everything Daddy did. I didn't show Mom because I didn't want her to be sad. But I think she needs it now. The courtroom went still. Even Ethan leaned forward. The judge motioned her closer. Mia walked up to the bench, placed the notebook down, and returned to my side. She didn't cry. She just squeezed my hand. "I'm not scared anymore," she whispered. The judge opened the cover. I couldn't see what he read, but I saw his face change. Frown lines deepened. He flipped a page, then another. He looked at Ethan. "Mr. Brooks, were you aware your daughter kept a record of your interactions at home?" Ethan looked like he'd just been doused with ice water. "No, that's ridiculous. She's a child." "She's a very observant child," the judge replied. He turned back to me. "Ms. Rivera, I will need time to review this material thoroughly. In the meantime, I'm placing a temporary hold on any custody shift. The children will remain in your care pending further investigation." I didn't breathe. I just nodded. Mia squeezed my hand again, and this time I squeezed back. Outside the courtroom, I collapsed onto the bench, shaking. Mia leaned against me while Leo wrapped his little arms around my leg. "Did we lose?" he asked. I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "We didn't lose. We're just getting started." I didn't mean to cry in the bathroom stall, but it happened anyway. The courthouse was cold, smelled like old coffee and cleaning supplies, and the fluorescent lights buzzed too loudly. I sat on the toilet with my backpack on my lap, trying not to shake. Mom thought I went to the restroom. She didn't know I locked myself in to breathe. My notebook was still in the judge's hands. I wondered if he read the part about the broken lamp. I hadn't planned to give it to anyone. Not ever. I started writing in it because it helped. Because no one believed me when I said things weren't right. I heard people call my dad a good man, a successful man. One of my teachers even said, "You must be so proud of your father. He's on the school board." I smiled and nodded because I didn't know how to say he throws things when he's mad, or he calls my mom names he never says in front of other people. Sometimes he'd apologize after. He'd bring home cupcakes or let me watch whatever I wanted on TV. That's what made it confusing. But when he slammed the car door so hard last Christmas that Leo cried for 15 minutes straight, I knew I needed to remember it. Write it down. Because someday someone would ask. And I wanted to be ready. That's what my notebook was. My ready. I splashed cold water on my face and looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red. My braid was falling out. I looked like a scared little kid again. But I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Something had shifted in court. When the judge read those pages and looked at my dad like he knew, I felt something crack open. A door, maybe. A way out. When I came back out, Mom was sitting on the bench with Leo sleeping in her lap. She looked up at me and smiled the way she does when she's proud but trying not to cry. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded.
Yeah.
"Are you?" She hesitated, then nodded too. "I think so. For now." We didn't go straight home. We couldn't afford a cab, and the bus was running late, so we walked the 6 blocks to the train station. It was windy. My ears burned. Mom gave me her scarf, even though I knew she needed it more than me. The train ride was quiet. Leo dozed against Mom's side, and I stared out the window at the blur of buildings. I kept thinking about what Dad would say when he found out. That the judge believed me. That the custody hearing wasn't over, but was finally fair. He'd call me a liar. He'd say I was confused. He might even yell. But I wasn't confused. I remembered everything. The night he told Mom she was worthless and dumped the casserole dish in the trash because dinner was 5 minutes late. The morning he screamed because Leo spilled juice on the carpet and Mom had to kneel and scrub it with a rag even though she was crying. The time I asked if we could go back to the museum again, and he said, "You think I have time for nonsense like that?" I remembered all of it. And now so did someone else. Back at our apartment, Mom made soup with the last of the carrots and rice. We ate with mismatched spoons while watching an old cartoon on her cracked laptop. The heat barely worked. I wore 2 sweaters and wrapped myself in a blanket. It wasn't fancy, but I liked being home. I liked not being scared of what voice I'd hear when the door opened. That night, after Leo fell asleep, Mom tucked me in and kissed my forehead. "You were so brave today," she whispered. "I just told the truth," I whispered back. She smiled. "Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do." She turned off the light, but I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. I kept thinking about what the judge said. That things would be reviewed. That Dad's custody request was on pause. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't even know if I'd get my notebook back. But I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The next day, things changed again. Mom got a call from the court. I watched her face while she listened, her mouth open slightly, one hand on the counter, like she needed to hold herself steady. When she hung up, she looked at me and Leo and said, "They're launching an investigation into Dad's behavior. A family evaluator is coming to talk to us next week." Leo blinked. "What's that mean?" "It means," she said carefully, "someone wants to hear our side." For the first time in forever, I saw her eyes fill with something other than fear. She smiled. Not a fake one, not a forced one, but a real one. Like maybe she finally believed what I already knew. We weren't alone anymore. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's lawyer holding up my life like a broken exhibit. Each bank statement, each blurry photo of our apartment, each clipped sentence meant to erase everything I'd sacrificed. But then I'd remember Mia standing there,
Brave. Steady.
offering her truth like a match in a dark room. It still didn't feel real. The family evaluator was coming today. Ms. Kendall. The name alone made my stomach tighten. She wasn't a judge, but she had power. Power to write a report that could tip the entire case. She would visit our apartment, talk to the kids, assess our life. And no matter how much I scrubbed or rearranged, I couldn't make poverty look like stability. The heater still clicked off without warning. The second-hand couch had a rip in the armrest. Leo's twin mattress sat directly on the floor because I couldn't afford a frame. I tried to tell myself none of that mattered. That Ms. Kendall would see love in this place. The dinners we shared even when they were cheap. The notes Mia left for Leo on the fridge. The way I tucked them in every night like it was a ritual. I hoped she'd see all of it. But I knew what Ethan's side would say. Emotional instability. Financial inconsistency. Lack of structure. He didn't just want custody. He wanted control over the story, the optics, the judgment. The doorbell rang at 10:03. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Ms. Kendall was in her mid-40s, dressed simply, clipboard in hand. She smiled politely and stepped inside without commenting on the chipped paint or the faint smell of bleach. "Thank you for having me, Ms. Rivera." "Of course. Please have a seat." She asked to see the kids' room first. I led her down the narrow hall. Mia had tidied the shared space so carefully. Her books were stacked neatly beside Leo's dinosaur toys, and they had both made drawings for the walls. Mia's read, "Family is love, not stuff." I didn't tell her to write that. She just knew. Ms. Kendall asked the kids to talk with her one at a time. Leo went first. I waited in the kitchen, hands clenched, trying not to eavesdrop but catching snatches of his soft voice. "She makes pancakes sometimes, even if we don't have syrup. I like sleeping in her bed when I get scared. Daddy says she's sad all the time, but I think she's strong." When it was Mia's turn, I could hear less. Ms. Kendall closed the door behind them, but I didn't need to hear what Mia would say. She never lied to protect people who hurt her. Not anymore. When they finished, Ms. Kendall came back to the kitchen. "I'd like to ask you a few things about your relationship with Mr. Brooks," she said gently. I nodded, though every part of me wanted to curl in. She asked when the abuse started. It was such a simple question, but my mind didn't have a simple answer. "It wasn't always yelling," I said, staring down at my chipped mug of coffee. "It started quiet. Little things. Like how he told me not to wear certain colors because they washed me out. Or how he suggested I cut off my friends, said they were jealous or gossipy. At first, I thought he was just protective." I looked up at her. But then came the isolation. The financial control. He made me quit my job when I was pregnant with Leo. Said he'd take care of everything. I didn't realize what I was giving up. It wasn't just income. It was independence. Ms. Kendall was writing but listening too. He started yelling more after Leo was born. Got angry if dinner wasn't done when he walked in the door. Accused me of not doing anything all day, even though I had a newborn and a toddler. If I cried, he'd say I was being dramatic. If I didn't cry, he'd say I was cold. She paused. "Did it ever get physical?" "Not the way you're asking," I said. But he threw things. Slammed doors. Once, he kicked the laundry basket so hard it broke a leg and hit Mia in the shin. I saw her writing stop for a second. "Why didn't you report it then?" she asked, not unkindly. I laughed, quiet and bitter. Because by then, I didn't believe anyone would believe me.
He had the job.
The friends. The reputation. I had stained clothes and bags under my eyes. I was a mom with no job, no money, and no voice. There was silence after that. Then she said, "Thank you. That's all for now. You'll hear from the court once my full report is submitted." She left just as quietly as she came. And then we waited. 3 days later, Ethan filed a motion claiming I had manipulated the children and poisoned their perception. His lawyer submitted character statements from 2 of his golf buddies and his boss. The court set a new hearing for the following Monday. I was terrified. Again. I showed up wearing the same black dress from the last hearing. It was clean but tight across the ribs now because I'd lost more weight than I realized. Stressed as that. Ethan sat across from me.
Calm.
Like always. But something was different. Ms. Kendall entered with a sealed folder. She handed it directly to the judge and took a seat. The judge reviewed it silently for several minutes. I watched his expression shift in quiet waves. Curiosity, concern, something harder I couldn't name. Then he looked up. This court has reviewed the report from the family evaluator, he said. He looked at Ethan. Mr. Brooks, there are documented behaviors here, including psychological manipulation, verbal abuse, and patterns of coercive control. These are serious concerns, especially in a household with minor children. Ethan's mouth opened slightly. That's not accurate. The judge raised a hand. Ms. Kendall also interviewed the children separately. Their statements were consistent, independent, and clearly indicate emotional distress caused by exposure to hostile domestic dynamics. My hands started shaking. And then, the judge said the words I hadn't dared to hope for. In light of these findings, temporary sole custody will be granted to Ms. Rivera, pending final ruling. Mr. Brooks will be permitted supervised visitation only twice a month until further review. Ethan stood up. This is outrageous. Sit down, Mr. Brooks, the judge snapped. You've spoken enough. I covered my mouth. Tears finally fell, not out of fear, but relief. I looked at Mia and Leo. They were watching me from the front bench. Mia smiled, and Leo gave a quiet little thumbs up. I never felt so exhausted. Or so seen. The truth had finally started to speak louder than the lies. And for the first time in years, the system had listened. The court order said Ethan was only allowed supervised visits twice a month at the Franklin Family Center, but that didn't mean he was finished with us. Not even close. It started with small things. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. You're destroying those kids. Don't think this ends with one judge's opinion. Your lies won't protect you forever. I didn't respond. I blocked each number. But they kept coming. Different area codes. Different wording. Same threat. When I brought it up to my court-appointed advocate, she warned me. Abusers don't need contact. They just need access to fear. That's their favorite currency. She was right. Ethan didn't need the house, the title of Father of the Year, or even custody to feel powerful. He just needed to remind me he was still watching. Still dangerous. Still in the picture. The first supervised visit was scheduled for a rainy Saturday morning. I dressed Leo and Mia in their best outfits. Even though we didn't have much, I ironed Leo's little collared shirt and braided Mia's hair with navy ribbons that barely held their shape anymore. Neither of them asked if they had to go. They just moved slowly, quietly, like they were packing for a trip they didn't want to take. When we arrived, the building was gray, uninviting. The waiting room smelled like old crayons and disinfectant. A guard checked us in while a social worker with round glasses and a clipboard smiled too brightly. Hi, I'm Miss Brenda. I'll be monitoring the visit today. Mia's hand tightened in mine. I leaned down and whispered, I'll be right here the whole time, okay? She nodded. When Ethan walked in 10 minutes later, he looked different.
His hair was Messier.
His button-down was wrinkled. The confidence, the fake calm he wore like armor, was cracked at the edges. He smiled like nothing was wrong. Hey, kiddo, he said to Leo, arms open wide. Mia, sweetheart, come here. Neither child moved. Brenda looked between them. You can say hello. This is your time. Leo walked forward first, cautious. Mia stayed where she was. I couldn't go in the room. I had to stay behind the two-way mirror with Brenda's assistant, watching the interaction unfold like some twisted science experiment. The first few minutes were uneventful. Ethan brought a board game, asked basic questions, school, cartoons. if they missed their big comfy beds at his house. But then he leaned closer to Mia. You told them things about me, didn't you? Brenda sat up straighter. Mia didn't answer. Ethan continued, voice low. You made Mommy look like the victim. That's what she wanted. Mia looked away. And that's when Ethan lost it, not loud, but sharper than I'd ever seen in public. He snapped a plastic game piece in half between his fingers and hissed, You always took her side, even when she was wrong. Brenda stood up. Mr. Brooks, please step back. He didn't move. Visitation is terminated for today, she said firmly. Escort in 3, 2. The door opened. Security entered. Ethan stood and threw his hands up like he was the victim. This is insane. You're all brainwashed. He pointed toward the mirror. This is her. All of it. She's turned my kids against me. The guard stepped in. Let's go, Mr. Brooks. Ethan looked at Mia one last time. I hope you're proud of yourself. I didn't cry in front of the kids. I took them straight home, let them each pick a movie, and popped popcorn even though we were out of salt. They laughed a little. It felt like warmth cracking through a frozen window. But later that night, after they went to bed, I broke. I sat on the bathroom floor and cried into a towel so they wouldn't hear me. Not because I was afraid of him anymore, but because I knew what he'd done to her.
To us.
I thought about how many times I'd tried to protect them by staying. How many lies I told myself so they wouldn't grow up in a broken home, not realizing we were already living in one. 3 days later, the social worker's report from the visitation was filed. It included phrases like, manipulative speech patterns directed at child, emotional coercion, unfit for unsupervised interaction. The judge called an emergency review. I stood in court again, this time with Brenda at my side as a witness. Ethan showed up without a lawyer. He tried to paint the visit as a misunderstanding, blamed stress, said Mia misinterpreted sarcasm. The judge wasn't having it. You were warned to keep interactions positive and free of blame. You violated those conditions within 15 minutes of the first visit. Ethan's face flushed red. I'm suspending all visitation indefinitely, the judge ruled. You may file for reinstatement after undergoing a full psychological evaluation and anger management therapy. Until then, there will be no contact, direct or indirect. Ethan tried to argue, but the gavel hit hard. It was over. After the hearing, I took the kids to the park. The sun had broken through the clouds, and for once, we didn't talk about court or visitation or lawyers. Mia kicked off her shoes and ran barefoot in the grass. Leo chased a squirrel with a stick like it was a sword. I sat on the bench and watched them play. And for the first time in years, I let myself breathe. No texts, no threats, no watching the clock to see when the next argument might come. Just the sound of my daughter's laughter and the warmth of a world that no longer had to make space for a shadow. The silence after the court's decision was loud. No more court dates. No more supervised visits. No more urgent voicemails from Ethan's lawyer trying to twist reality into something I couldn't recognize. But quiet doesn't always mean peace. I kept looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next move. Because I knew Ethan. I knew his anger didn't fade. It simmered. Controlled men don't handle losing control with grace. Still, I did my best to return life to some kind of normal. Mia started sleeping through the night again. Leo stopped flinching when the phone rang. I even caught them giggling in their room one morning, building a blanket fort across their bunk beds with kitchen chairs and old scarves. They were healing. But I wasn't. Not really. I was surviving. I'd gotten good at it. Good enough to make it look like thriving. But beneath the routine, beneath the smile I wore like armor, was a truth I hadn't told anyone. A part of the story even the court didn't know. It had started with the passwords. About 6 months before I left Ethan, I noticed my phone acting strange, calls dropping, apps closing mid-use. I brought it to the cell store and the guy behind the counter frowned. Did you give anyone remote access? No, I said. He showed me the setting that had been toggled on. A mirrored screen feed going to an unknown email. You've got spyware, he said, like it was just another cracked screen. Someone's watching everything you do. My stomach dropped. But even then, I didn't want to believe it was him. I wanted to believe it was a fluke, a virus, an accident. I went home and confronted him.
He laughed.
Paranoid much? He said, pouring himself a drink. Did you put something on my phone? I wouldn't need to, he said calmly. You don't have anything to hide, do you? He said it with a smile. But his eyes? They were daring me to fight. That was when I stopped using my phone to text friends. Stopped Googling anything I didn't want him to see. Stopped checking my bank account unless I was at work on the office computer. Every part of me curled inward. And then months later, I found the burner phone in his gym bag. It wasn't hidden well, almost like he wanted me to find it. There were messages.
Hundreds of them.
All from one number, all signed with the letter K. They weren't flirtations. They were plans. She was helping him, advising him, sending links to divorce lawyers, custody strategy blogs, financial loophole forums. One message burned itself into my brain.
She's weak.
Use that. Make her look unstable, and you'll win before she sees it coming. That was when I realized he hadn't just stopped loving me. He was plotting against me. And she wasn't just some affair. She was a co-conspirator. Her name was Kendra. I never confronted him about it. I packed up the kids the next morning while he was at work and moved into a friend's basement. He didn't come looking. Not right away. He waited until it looked legal.
Clean.
Until he had a lawyer and a strategy and a version of the story that painted him as the abandoned parent. He even had the nerve to accuse me of infidelity in our first mediation meeting. That was the day I understood just how far he'd go. I hadn't told anyone about the burner phone. Not the court. Not even my own lawyer.
Why?
Because I was scared they'd ask for it, and I'd have to admit I'd smashed it with a hammer and thrown the pieces in a public dumpster like some crime scene cover-up. I didn't keep it for evidence. I couldn't. I couldn't bear the thought of those words existing in my house. But part of me regretted it. Part of me wished I'd kept it, documented it, made a case. Because now that the legal storm had quieted, the emotional wreckage was showing. Mia was fine at school but silent at night. Leo had nightmares that made him wake up whispering, "Don't yell, Daddy." And me? I couldn't look in the mirror without remembering how easily I let myself disappear. That Sunday, I got a call from a number I didn't know. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. "Hello." There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Is this Elena?" I froze.
Yes.
"Who is this?" This is Sophie, your sister." My chest constricted. We hadn't spoken in over 6 years. Not since the fight. Not since she told me Ethan gave her a bad feeling and I snapped at her for judging my marriage. And now here she was on the line, her voice small and unsure. "I saw your name in an article," she said, "about the custody hearing. Someone shared it on Facebook. I know it's been a long time, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I sat down slowly. She continued, "I didn't know how bad it was. I didn't know what he did to you. But if you ever need anything, I'm here." I swallowed hard.
I didn't know what to say.
The pain between us wasn't gone, but it had shifted.
Softened.
"Thank you," I whispered. "I might take you up on that." And for the first time since Ethan walked out of that courtroom, I felt something new. Not survival. Not fear. But maybe reconnection. A root reaching back through scorched soil. A hand from the past offering something I hadn't had in years.
Support.
I didn't know what nervous pride felt like until I walked into that building. It was just a community center, a modest brick place with flickering hallway lights and mismatched chairs, but for me, it felt like a skyscraper. A threshold. I hadn't held a job in nearly 7 years. Not since Ethan told me it wasn't worth it for me to work. Said the commute would cost more than my paycheck. Said I'd thank him later when I wasn't drowning in office drama or wasting time with coworkers I'd outgrown. So I stayed home. And now, 7 years later, I was sitting in the lobby of the Jefferson Workforce Reentry Program, hands sweating against a crumpled folder containing the only 3 things I had left on my resume: an old law degree, a year of paralegal experience, and a bullet point about conflict de-escalation in high-stress environments, which basically meant surviving marriage to Ethan. A woman named Patrice called me into her office. She had box braids, bright coral lipstick, and eyes that told me she'd seen women like me before. "Tell me your story," she said, skipping right past small talk. I hesitated, and then I told her. Not everything, but enough. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Let's get you back to work, Elena." I wanted to hug her. Instead, I nodded and swallowed the knot in my throat. 2 weeks later, I was working 10 hours a week, admin support at a small legal clinic downtown. Not much, but mine. I picked up extra shifts cleaning in the evenings, just enough to pad the savings I'd started for a secondhand car. It wasn't glamorous, but every paycheck felt like a brick laid in the foundation of something I thought I'd lost forever: freedom. Mia noticed the change first. "You walk different now," she said one night while helping me fold laundry. "Different how?" "Like you know where you're going." I smiled. Maybe I finally do. But freedom, like healing, doesn't come without a cost. The run-in happened at a grocery store, of all places. On a Tuesday afternoon, between frozen waffles and shampoo. I was pushing the cart with Mia walking beside me when I heard his voice.
"Well,
"Look who's thriving." My heart plummeted. I turned and there he was,
Ethan."
holding a reusable grocery bag and wearing the same smile he always used when he wanted to seem harmless. Friendly.
Fake.
I instinctively put my hand on Mia's back. "What do you want?" I said quietly. "To talk," he said. "Like adults." Mia stepped closer to me. Ethan's eyes darted to her. "Mia, go grab a juice or something, okay?"
"No," she said.
Her voice was clear. Cold. "I said," he repeated, "go." She said no. I snapped. He stared at me, and for a moment, I saw it. The man beneath the mask. The same man who used to slam cabinet doors just loud enough to make me flinch. The same man who sat on the couch criticizing everything from my cooking to the way I talked too much at dinner. The man who used silence like a weapon and kindness like bait. "You think this is over?" he said softly, stepping just close enough for his breath to touch my cheek. Courts change their minds. I've filed appeals before. Things swing back. I didn't answer. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "You've poisoned my kids," he continued. "Made me out to be some monster. But you forget something, Elena." His voice dropped lower. "I know who you really are. And no matter what face you show them, I remember the rest." That's when Mia stepped forward. She stood between us. Small, but fierce. "Then maybe you should have written it down," she said. "Because I did. And everyone else believed me." Ethan blinked. Just once. Then he turned, jaw clenched, and walked away, shoulders stiff, step sharp. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then I exhaled, realizing I hadn't been breathing. Mia turned to me. "Are you okay?" I looked at her, my daughter, my anchor, and nodded. "I am now." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not the confrontation, but her.
Mia.
How she didn't shrink.
Didn't flinch.
Didn't wait for me to save her. She saved me. I sat on the edge of her bed while she slept, brushing a loose strand of hair off her cheek. The glow of her nightlight cast soft shadows on her face. And I whispered a promise I hadn't dared make until now. We're going to build a new life. A full one. And no one, not even him, is going to take it from us again. The letter arrived in a plain white envelope, folded neatly into thirds. It wasn't from the court. It wasn't from Ethan. It was from a name I hadn't thought about in nearly a year: Kendra Winston. The same K from the burner phone. The woman Ethan leaned on while dismantling our marriage. The woman who, for all I knew, had vanished into the background the moment the spotlight turned toward court proceedings. But she was back now. And what she sent me wasn't a threat. Or an apology. It was a statement sworn, signed, and notarized. I sat at the kitchen table reading it while Mia worked on homework across from me and Leo colored in a dinosaur book beside her. My fingers trembled as I turned the pages. In it, she admitted everything. I was involved with Ethan Brooks during the last 2 years of his marriage to Elena Rivera. I helped him structure a plan to secure full custody of their children by appearing to be the more stable parent while undermining Elena's access to resources and legal guidance. She explained how Ethan had moved money into accounts under her name, including offshore investments. She'd kept records, emails,
Statements.
passwords.
And now?
She was ready to come clean. I believed his story at the time, that Elena was emotionally unstable and manipulative. But I've since learned the truth. And I refuse to be part of the lie any longer. The moment I finished reading it, I called my advocate. 2 days later, my attorney filed a motion to reopen the custody case for final ruling, citing new evidence of premeditated manipulation and financial fraud. The court granted it immediately. Ethan would have to face the judge again. I showed up to court that day wearing a dark navy blazer from the thrift store. My hands were steady. My spine was straight. I wasn't the same woman who first stepped into this building months ago. This time, I wasn't trying to prove I was a good mother. This time, I was going to prove he was a liar. When Ethan walked in, he looked confused, then irritated, then cautious.
He didn't know yet.
That's how airtight we'd kept it. The judge opened the hearing by referencing the motion. Then he opened the envelope and began to read Kendra's statement into the official record. Ethan's face changed with every word. First his eyes narrowed. Then his mouth dropped open slightly. Then he stood. This is false. She's lying. She's just bitter. Sit down, Mr. Brooks, the judge said firmly. I never gave her money. I don't know what she's talking about. She has records, my attorney said calmly. Bank transfers, emails, phone logs. You can't trust her. Ethan snapped. She's unstable. She threatened me. She also passed a voluntary polygraph, the judge said, flipping another page, and has already submitted her evidence to the state bar. Silence fell over the room. Then the judge looked directly at Ethan. Mr. Brooks, this court finds sufficient cause to reopen your financial disclosures, re-examine your sworn statements, and consider permanent termination of your custodial privileges. Ethan's hand shook. You can't do this. You did this, the judge replied. He turned toward me. Ms. Rivera, pending the outcome of the financial review, I am moving to grant you full and permanent legal and physical custody of your children. Mr. Brooks will not be eligible for visitation until further notice. I couldn't breathe. The gavel hit the block with finality. And just like that, it was over. Outside the courthouse, I held Mia's hand while Leo climbed the stone bench near the steps, pretending to be a pirate on a lookout. Is it really done? Mia asked softly. I looked down at her, and I smiled, not the tired kind, not the scared kind, the real kind. Yes, I said. It's really done. That night, I made pasta with Jared sauce and canned mushrooms, and it was the best meal we'd had in months. We danced around the living room to old music on the radio. Leo wore socks and slid across the hardwood like a penguin. Mia sang along with the chorus of every song. After they went to bed, I sat alone on the couch and opened the notebook. Mia's notebook. The first page still made my heart ache. July 2nd. Daddy yelled again. Mommy said it was okay, but I don't think it is. But by the end? March 14th, Mommy got her job. We have pancakes on Fridays now. April 8th. Daddy's not allowed to scare us anymore. May 3rd. We're safe now. I like it here. I closed the book. There were still pieces of the past I hadn't figured out how to heal. Still bruises that wouldn't show up in court records or case files. But this was the beginning of something better. Sunlight spilled through our living room window that Saturday morning, painting golden patches across the worn hardwood floors. For the first time in what felt like forever, I woke up without the weight in my chest. No dread, no panic, just the soft hum of life moving forward. I tiptoed into the kids' room. Leo was already awake, propped on his elbows, tracing doodles in his notebook. Mia sat beside him, legs folded under her, reading out loud from a mystery novel she discovered at the library. I watched them and felt a smile lift the corners of my lips, wide and genuine. This was the life I'd fought for. Not the excitement of courtrooms or the adrenaline of a last-minute surprise witness.
But this.
The ordinary, sacred moments that stitched us back together. I cleared my throat. Good morning, my two favorite bookworms. They looked up. Mia's smile was bright enough to outshine the sunbeam on her hair. Leo grinned, pushing the notebook toward me. On the page was a sketch of our apartment. The front door, the rug by the couch, even the chipped windowsill where I kept my small herb pots. Underneath, in Mia's neat handwriting, home isn't perfect, but it's ours. I swallowed hard, my throat tight with emotion. It's perfect, I whispered. Later that day, we walked to the park down the street, hands linked, small backpacks bouncing with snacks and a deck of cards. The air was warm, but a gentle breeze chased the heat away, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine. We found our usual bench, the one shaded by the old oak tree. I watched as Leo chased bubbles. Mia blew them from a tiny wand, laughing every time one popped against his forehead. I closed my eyes and let their joy fill me, a tide washing away the echoes of shouting voices and slammed doors. When I opened my eyes, I saw another woman approaching, a friend from the legal clinic where I worked. Sarah had been the first person to believe me when I walked in seeking work. She carried a small bundle of papers. Elena, she called, smiling. I have something for you. I stood and hugged her. What is it? She handed me a thick envelope. Your certificate. I blinked. You completed the bookkeeping certification program. You're fully qualified now. I tore it open. The certificate inside bore my name, crisp and official. A tear slipped down my cheek, this time not from fear or relief, but from pride. Mia and Leo watched me, curiosity shining in their eyes. I'm officially a bookkeeper, I said, voice trembling. Which means I'm building a career for us. A stable one. Mia clapped. That's amazing, Mom. Leo hugged my leg. So, we can get that backyard garden you wanted? I laughed. Yes, wildflower garden. And maybe some tomatoes. That evening, after dinner, we cuddled on the couch. I pulled out the journal I'd kept since the beginning of our journey. It was worn at the edges, pages full of tears, triumphs, and everything in between. I read aloud a passage from the very first entry. I sat in that courtroom today feeling broken. But as long as my children believe in me, I have to keep believing too. I closed the book and looked at their faces. I want you to know something, I said softly. All those days, the hardest days, were worth it because they brought us here. They showed us how strong we are. Not because we never fell, but because we learned to get back up together. Mia leaned her head against my shoulder. You stayed up for me, Mom. Remember the nights you sat by my bed until I fell asleep? I hugged her tighter. And I will always stay up for you, no matter what. Leo reached over and grabbed my hand. I love you, Mom. I love you both more than words, I whispered. A few nights later, I sat at my desk drafting an email to Kendra Winston. I still hadn't spoken to her since she submitted her statement, but I owed her thanks. Dear Kendra, I don't know where you are now or what path you've chosen, but you gave me back my children and my life. I hope you find peace and healing in your own story. Thank you. I hesitated, then clicked send. It felt like closing a circle, honoring the honesty that had saved us all. A month later, the three of us walked along the riverside promenade, hand in hand, as dusk settled. The sky was painted in streaks of pink and lavender. Street lamps flickered on, and distant laughter drifted across the water. Mia stopped and picked up a smooth stone. She handed it to me. For courage, she said. Leo found one too, smaller and round, and handed it to his sister. For love. I held both stones, feeling their weight, a promise of what we carried forward. I bent down and hugged them each, my heart full enough to burst. For us, I said, this is our story. A story that began in fear and desperation, but found its way to hope and resilience. We didn't win because we had money or perfect appearances. We won because we had truth and love, and because sometimes the smallest voice in the room can change everything. If our journey moved you, Remember this: you have strength inside you might not even know. When you feel like the world is against you, keep breathing, keep standing, and never underestimate the power of honesty and courage. Thank you for walking alongside us. Share this story with someone who needs to know they're not alone. And if you want more stories of resilience and triumph, subscribe and join our community. Your support keeps us going, and every like, comment, or share is a reminder that love and truth matter.